In this video, I want to give you a quick overview of the RStudio environment, talk about the different components that you'll see in the RStudio viewer, and also show you how to load in some data. Now, for now, the primary kind of data that we'll be working with is data from a CSV file, which is a typical spreadsheet. And the data that I've supplied to you for the course, for now, will be distributed in this way. But later on, we will want to import data sets from perhaps other programs, some that have been created in Stata, some in SPSS, and I'll show you how to do that. So today, I just want to give you a sense of how we work with commands in R, and particularly how we use our working directory to call in data and to write data too. Now, if you're taking this course and you've downloaded the files available from the Moodle page, you'll have access to a spreadsheet called SO648_country_2026. And if you open that up, if you're on Windows, it'll just by default open in Excel. You can see that what we have here is a data grid with rows. So this is a country level data set. You've got a list of different countries down here. And along the top, you've got your column names. These are the different variables. So I'll post an index to the data set as well on the Moodle page. But if we just look at some of these, you see Health X GDP. What this is measuring is the percentage. It's expressing the total spend within this country. So for Australia, this is the total spend on health as a percentage of Australia's GDP in that particular year. So this data is from 2023. We've got other variables here which are about the share of tech exports and total exports, employment in the service sector, life expectancy, and we've got a couple of measures of inequality as well, the Gini coefficient and the income shares of the top 1% over here. So there's a lot of different national level variables here to work with. And this data set currently sits in this folder here, the one that in the previous video we told R to point to. So as long as you've set your working directory correctly to your SO6482026 folder, as we've seen by setting using the setwd command, or we'll be able to read in any suitable files that are located in here. Now, how we're going to do this is I'm going to create an object, and this is where we start to see the benefits of this environment window. And R is what's called an object-oriented language. We're going to create an item called SO648_country, and we're going to populate that with data from our CSV file, from that spreadsheet that we just saw, using this command called read_CSV. And where we get this from is from this package readr. Remember in the last video I directed you to install these. And this is just a command that streamlined the importing of data for us for data sets in this format. So if we run that piece of code there on line 33, and again, if you're working with this, with other kinds of data from yourselves, if you've got your own data that's saved in a CSV, or indeed there's many other spreadsheet formats that it can handle as well, you can simply substitute it with the name there. But if I run this, you'll see that it creates for us over here in the environment an object. Now we've got the heading data. So we've got some data here called SO648country, 47 observations and 28 variables. You see here, if we click into this little window viewer, we can now browse the data grid. Now, by default, what R has done is for any empty cells, it's given this NA, and we'll certainly want to modify some of our commands later to tell it exactly what to do with missing data like this with these NAs. But you can see there quickly, we've got a range of different variables. Some of these are in text, for example, the country name and the 3-letter country code. We've also got some categorical variables where we've identified if a country is EU or non-EU, and whether it's, according to the UN classification, developed or developing. But most of these are numeric, as you can see here. So now that we've got our data loaded into memory, you'll see here that we can close these tabs down whenever we want. If we want to go back in and browse the data set, we can move this around at any time. Now, there's other things in the global environment that we'll want to look at as well. Next to the environment tab, we've got history, and this is particularly useful because history will record a log of every single thing that we do in R. Now you can see here we have the command version of what we just did here previously. Whenever we click this to browse our data, that's equivalent to us typing in the console or executing from the script this command view SO648 country. And we can actually rerun any of those pieces of code. If we double click on any of these, it'll drop it into the console for us. And we can rerun it, and sure enough, it'll open up our data for us again. So the history tab is worth keeping an eye on, because when we quite often we might make some edits to this OR code over here in the sheet and save it, and maybe we want to go back and see exactly where was a particular thing that I did, and that's preserved for us in the history unless we decide to erase it. But we're going to spend most of our time in the environment tab for now. You can also import data manually, and you'll see here if we go to import data set, you can see that OR is set up to handle a range of different file types from Excel, from other packages, SPSS and SAS, and later on in the course we'll also import some data in Stata format, which is principally .dta. Down here in this window, you see we've got a viewer, we've got files, plots, packages, help, and presentation. Packages is where we can see what packages we have loaded and what libraries we have active in OR's memory. So we loaded up a couple of ones here, including ggplot, which you'll see here. And we also have readOR down below, which should be active as well, which allowed us to use the readcsv command. We also have help menus. And if you click on the home tab here in help, it'll bring you back to here. And we will be using the help dialogues quite a lot in OR. They're a very useful resource. There's some manuals here, which includes an introduction to OR that gives you an overview of the workflow of OR and a bit about the grammar and syntax and how it works. But we can also access tutorials on other things. As we'll see later on, we can get reference materials for different packages. So if we wanted to read a little bit more about how ggplot works, we can scroll down to the relevant help functions, and we can access that. So if we go into packages here and we go down to G here and we look under ggplot2, we can access a range of different help options here. So some of these are very detailed. You see what it's done is it's arranged here alphabetically all of the different settings and parameters that we might encounter in ggplot. Again, we're not going to use 99% of this. We're probably not going to delve into in any detail in this course, but we also have a little option here which is user guides, package vignettes, and other documentation. And we can go in and look at this introduction to ggplot file over here, which is actually really helpful in explaining just the sort of logic of OR and of ggplot and how it layers all these different elements together to produce a plot. So again, I'm just making you aware of this because it's useful to know that you've got a backup here as well later on if you need to get some more detailed help with anything. But actually when we access, when we go to look for help for particular things within the course, we'll actually write it in here in the code and use it to bring us directly to those more specific subpages. Now, once we've got our data loaded, there's a lot we can do to inspect our data. In the data file for this week, we have a number of different commands. We've got this one, view SO648_country. And again, just getting familiar with the syntax of OR, we can see here we've got a command and we've got an object to perform that command on, which is our SO648 country, which is this item here, our data set. If we run view, it's going to bring us back to our data grid, so we can go back and inspect the data anytime. But we might want to get more detailed summaries of both the contents of the data set and the type of data that we've got. And this option here, head, is quite useful. If we run head on the same data file, it's going to give us just a quick snapshot of the data set. It'll take the top 6 rows for us as well. It'll give us a list of the variables, and it'll also show us the variable type, CHR for character, DBL for dub. We'll get into these a little bit more as we go through the course. We also might want to know quickly if we're producing a graph or something and we're trying to get a variable name. Often we might want to know the col names, the names of the different variables in the data set. If we run this will give us a list of all of the exact names of the variables in this data set. And you can see here, even if we browse back through it manually, we can see all of these names here, CNTRY, CNTRY_code. And here we have them again in sequence given to us by that col names command. Later on, we might want to take a more closer look at the specific file type. And we'll get into what this means further on into the course. We have a data frame and a TBL type. So this particular file, SO648_country, in this format has these different attributes. Later on, we'll also want to maybe point our command towards a particular variable in a data set. And to do that, OR uses this $ operator. If we want to know the class of a variable within this data set, we can use the $ to point to a variable within the data. And down here, it shows us that this is a character variable. This is EU and non-EU. And then for variables that are numeric variables, we can use the summary command, which will give us some very crude, but again, sometimes useful summary statistics. So for our unemployment variable, there's our mean, which is 8.5. For our Gini coefficient, our mean is 34.39. The highest recorded Gini value in the dataset, max, is 63, and the lowest is 25.4. So this is good for just getting a quick overview of the contents of a data set and just inspecting some things around the variables. Now, when we get to running commands in OR from the script, these .or files, often you'll find that because we'll be adding different settings and asking it to do different things, some of these will run into multiple lines. To run a multiple line command, we just highlight as many lines as necessary, and we can run multiple lines at the same time as part of the same command just by dragging our mouse over them, hitting run. And for this command, we've asked it to summarize two particular variables from this data set. One is Gini, one is top1, and we've asked it to give it the mean and to exclude the NAs, to remove the NAs. And here we see our mean for Gini is 34.4, which again, we could have gotten from this as well. It'll round it to the nearest whole, 34.4. And for the top 1%, it's 12.6, which again, we could have gotten here, 12.6, rounding to the nearest decimal. So that's a quick overview of how we work with commands, a little bit about the contents of RStudio to get you a bit more familiar with the general workflow.